the lady in question here that that a Pantheon is talking to with the shattered arm, that's like the Astra Militarum, or just the guardsmen,
Mm-hmm.
just normal dudes. Like normal dudes. I got drafted and I went to war
For a Dodge Charger.
Yep, for a Dodge Charger. Bard told me he turned me into a chime, and now I'm here. Like that's.
Welcome to Casuals of Runeterra, episode 102. I'm your host, Ryan, here with your other host, Edge.
What's up? Let's talk about some gods and then kill them.
Don't we always? Let's start with housekeeping first, though. Hold on just a bit. Housekeeping up top. You can listen to us everywhere. You can send emails to podcastcore, that's COR, @gmail.com. Visit us at podcastcore for all of our info. And then follow us on any platform that you prefer, or all the platforms, because that helps us and we appreciate it. Leave a like, a comment, a short review with your thoughts. But the easiest way is word of mouth. Tell at least one friend, we know you have at least one, to remember her name by listening to the Casuals of Runeterra podcast.
All right, and if we had an editor, this is where we would request to have like that image from The Simpsons where Homer changes his work desk with pictures of Maggie and says, "Do it for her."
Yeah, and we do have an editor, but I don't want to do it. So
don't do it for us. Don't do it for us. Do it for her, guys.
Do it for her. Yeah. So last episode we talked about Pantheon. Obviously, we're hyped for that. It's a pretty long episode. This episode is going to be shorter because we're getting some more Pantheon, and we're getting some Pantheon from his personal view. And by personal, obviously, I mean first person. This is cool because Pantheon does see the world in a grandiose way, right? Everything is hyperbole, everything is next level, which isn't too absurd for his character because of what he's gone through. So it kind of makes sense. And it's interesting to get that perspective.
Yeah, and the only real negative is that if you doubt me on this, go and read the story and then just tell me if I'm wrong. It's kind of hard to keep up with.
Yeah,
because sometimes it feels like Atreus talking, and then sometimes it's like, oh no, he's now talking as Pantheon, and Pantheon is not. He is not speaking in terms that we can understand. I can't follow what Pantheon's saying.
Exactly. I was one, I consider myself a comprehensive reader per se. And it took me a couple read-throughs of okay, wait, who's talking? What's going on? Wait, who's where in this scene? And we'll clarify that as we go through to try to keep you guys on track. Because that's our job. That's why we're here.
It's like, so does that mean just the battlefield, or are we talking like planet wide? What's going on?
What's the scale of this comment?
All I can say is that there are some days that I just wish I could be as dramatic as Pantheon.
Yeah. So let's hop into it. The story is called For Those Who Have Fallen. And as always, a good story in 3 parts. We start with part 1. So this story, once again, is in first person. It's from Pantheon's view. And we start with Pantheon landing like Superman in Shurima. Specifically, here we go. As the precursor to all of our episodes, when there are names that are out there, we're going to try our best and then try to stick to it so we don't confuse you. Here we have Narimazeth.
Narimazeth. Yep, Narimazeth. That's canon now. No one can take it from us.
Okay, perfect. He lands in Narimazeth, and there are around him soldiers, 50 of them specifically, and they're Solari warriors from Mount Targon, and they're fighting. And they're known, once again, as the Raharak, which we've talked about in the past. Obviously, Ra, god of the sun, blah, blah, blah. We've been there. Hail Talos. It's taken 3 weeks.
I hate you.
It's taken.
Okay.
This has been like an ongoing joke between me and Hedge for like a decade.
Well over a decade by now.
So it's taken them 3 weeks to get here. For Pantheon, he can essentially fly, right? So it's cool. But what they've been doing is they're investigating a growing power in the ruins. And this is obviously post-Runation. Insert number. I don't know which one we're at here.
I think the Shuriman one was Ruination 3. I want to say that was
Something
Ruination
like that.
3.
Yeah.
If it's Ruination 3.0, that's in the chronological order of our episodes, because I think if we go chronologically by like Runeterra timeline, it's Ruination 4.
Yeah.
There's a lot of ruinations. Runeterra is not like the greatest place to just be like a normal civilian in. Let's just leave it at that.
By no means.
By no means.
So Narimazeth is considered like the heart of Shurima at this point. This is where everything started. It's the motherland, quote unquote, for like humans. And this is where the first Ascended were born, as you would know if you listen to all of our Shurima episodes, which you should do. We highly encourage it because it'll give you a lot of background and it gives you a great surprise later in the story.
And we'd be very grateful for it too. Just saying.
Just saying. So after the empire fell, these ascendants began to slowly go mad over their indefinite lifespans. You know, we talk about vampires and the concept of living forever, immortality, and what that does mentally to certain creatures. And this is specifically referring to like, you know, Renekton, Nasus, Zareth, all the Sun Disc folk that we've talked about in the episodes before. And there's a metric ton of details there. So yes, go listen to those episodes. But some even become darkened. Now, this is new information. This is something we didn't know up until this point. I mean, we knew. You didn't know. If you're listening to episodes, you didn't know.
Yeah. As far as in the episodes of the Casuals of Runeterra, this is news. But we're degenerates and we read way too much fantasy.
Yeah. So they can become darkened through other means, which we'll talk about later as well. And then they become trapped some become trapped in weapons later. Weapons and tools. This takes us to part 2, where things start to happen. The battle's already begun. That's going on. Pantheon can hear kind of familiar sounds of war, and he's getting hyped up, he's getting pumped. He's like, all right, let's get in hearing this. Let's do something. Let's influence this. And then there's these large magical blasts that are going everywhere, and he sees this creature in the distance. We have a quote here, burning and broken like the empire it would rule. A shattered god has claimed this fallen city and would see it rise again. If you're familiar with this, spoilers, we'll give you 5 seconds.
1 or 2
It's
or 3.
It's
We lied. It's only 3. But no, I'm definitely kind of on board with the theory that it's Zareth here, not only off of the description of what this being looks like, because we know, again, you know, spoilers, we'll give you half a second. All right, and we know that with Zareth's ascension, or him trying to take over from Azir's ascension, is that it turned him into a being of energy that's kind of held together by the ruined parts of the sun disk. And so that fits the description of what Pantheon's looking at now. And then we also have that line of burning and broken like the empire it would rule. And Zareth was very much a jealous person that wanted to take the power of ancient Shurima as his own. So it kind of fits. We know that Zareth comes back, and we know that Zareth is trying to rebuild, as far as like as in his new form, rebuild a force that's loyal to him to build a new Shuriman empire. So it all kind of fits together. The only thing that we don't know for certain is if we're right, because I mean, Pantheon has no idea who Zareth is. Atreus is, you know, just a human.
Yeah.
The Pantheon at this point is dead, quote unquote. And so, you know, Atreus is just looking at this like, yeah, rock, let's fight. And that's all we got.
Yeah. So the soldiers notice him and Pantheon leaps into action with his weapons channeling the magic that we've talked about that he has left over from when his body was taken over by Pantheon. He lunges, he absorbs one of the blasts from the creature, then he throws his spear and it strikes it to the ground, quote unquote, for now. At this point, he notices a woman who's injured. Her arm is injured from attempting to block one of his blasts from before, Zareth specifically. And she asks him, she's like, "Are you an aspect?" And Pantheon doesn't really respond because remember, he's dramatic and he's kind of in between worlds where, Pantheon's gone, but he's taken Pantheon's name to give it true meaning. And he's no longer Atreus, but you can't really explain that in 3 words. There's no elevator pitch for Pantheon's mental right now for this woman. So he just avoids it. He doesn't answer her and he turns around to see the creature reemerging and tells them, "Oh shit, I need help. You guys need to fight."
Yeah, and I mean, and it makes sense that he doesn't answer anything here because how do you explain that you're the aspect of a god that doesn't exist anymore? Because the kind of creatures that you're currently fighting killed the god but left me for dead. There's a lot. There's a lot there. It is very interesting though here that that Pantheon is looking to the Raharak as far as for help because again he's seeing this as far as Zareth getting back up, and he's calling to the only towards the only person that he knows is alive, which is this woman that's injured, just trying to block a shot, trying to stay alive. And it's like, yeah, you guys help me. I'd be like, bro, I am not equipped for this. I'm not ready for this. You just called your spear back using magic. I have a shattered arm. Call someone else. Call technical support.
And just a real quick, to go back to our Leona episode and talk about the Solari a little bit here, the main warrior contingent of the Raharak are a combination of really strong ground troops, but also space marine type troops as well. So there's a good blend there. And this woman though is ordinary, right? A lot of the guys that are around him that are kind of struggling in this fight are just the ordinary humans. They're nothing compared to him. We don't really know how many of the space marine quote unquote guys they have with them.
Yeah, especially since you're going to, make me the happiest person ever and bring a bit of Warhammer into this. Pantheon would be like a Space Marine kind of guy.
Yeah.
Or maybe even Custodes level. And you've got Leona and Diana that would be your Space Marine-esque people. The lady in question here that, that a Pantheon is talking to with the shattered arm, that's the Astra Militarum or just the guardsmen.
Mm-hmm.
Just normal dudes, normal dudes. I got drafted, and I went to war
for a Dodge Charger.
Yeah, for a Dodge Charger. Bard told me he turned me into a chime, and now I'm here. That's who Pantheon's calling to right now. Just some normal dudes. But I mean, we do know that the Raharak, as far as being normal dudes, they are more like Spartans. These, because that's what Atreus was training for. That's what he wanted to be before he became the aspect, is that part of the Raharak, defending his land's borders and his villages. So these guys are trained for war. It's not like they have been sitting on their butts all day. They are strong humans, but that's all they are humans.
Yeah, exactly. Well put. I gave you the layup there and you dunked it. So as he lunges towards the monster again, he continues to yell fight, but this time his words are slightly tinged with magic. And we've talked about this in the past. Words are magic, especially in this universe. And it's one of our favorite parts of Runeterra that they stipulate this a lot. In different bios, if you listen to our Annie episodes, if you listen to any magical based creatures or characters, we tend to bring it up. And Pantheon is not removed from that because, once again, he kept some of the powers from Pantheon. I know that's confusing because I said the same thing twice, but you know what I'm talking about at this point. You get it.
Yeah, go listen to their episode if that confused you. It'll become clear, and then come back here.
So that magical blast gets them into action, but Zareth is having none of it, as we know him well, and he starts blasting Pantheon as he's slashing and bashing at the Ascendant. And one massive attack actually pushes him back, and it splits off into multiple directions, hitting the other soldiers and creating a devastating environment. Pantheon also starts to begin to feel despair at the dire situation. It's a lot more difficult than he thought it was. And this is starting to cause his magic to fade because even though he doesn't believe in Pantheon, the powers that he retained from Pantheon require his own faith. Yeah. Great concept, kind of confusing, but
yeah. and to chime in on that note, like this is kind of the point where I was speaking towards at the beginning of the episode, where this is a little bit confusing because I'm interpreting this as that we're getting Pantheon in the fray, battling it out with Zareth, magically charging his weapons as well as the area around him to lift the spirits of the Raharak. And then when he gets pushed back from the Zareth blast, the Pantheon mindset is degrading while Atreus's human doubt is coming in. So then it's like, even though we haven't shifted out of the camera view of seeing the world through Pantheon's eyes, the narrator's changing. And as far as a read, it makes it really confusing, but it does kind of help reinforce the fact that Pantheon is kind of like a jacked up dude mentally, because, there is Atreus still in there, and Atreus is fighting for humanity, but he's using the power of the aspect of Pantheon. And that's why, all these pieces are kind of fuzzy almost, because at times I'm still Atreus, but at other times Pantheon's back and he takes over. And this is one of those moments where Atreus is like coming back in. And that's why, the morale for himself is kind of dwindling here, because it's like, oh crap, this thing could kill me. I might die here. And that's where we're kind of set at when he picks his head back up and he kind of sees what's happening on the battlefield around him again.
Exactly. And what he sees is Zareth is charging another massive blast. This was bigger than the last one that sent him to the ground in the first place. And everyone is scattered at this point, and the woman he just met earlier grabs her shield, scrambles in front of him. And Pantheon's like, "What's your name?" And she says, "Asos." And she turns her shield towards the blast. There's this brilliant light that shines, blinding, and then she's gone. Just dematerialized, gone.
We're talking like some Dragon Ball Z-esque death here of just shield up, facing the blast, and then the screen flashes white, the camera comes way out, just a satellite view, and you get to see the explosion of where Asos was. That's what happened to Asos here. She is dead. I mean, dead.
Yeah. And this takes us to part 3 of the story now, towards the end here, where Pantheon thinks he too is dead because she's gone. Nothing is it's pretty much a blank space. He's kind of retreated into his mental, and the only thing that brings him back, which is a constant theme throughout some Pantheon stories, is the throbbing scar on his chest that proves I'm still human. Well, I'm not still human because I'm no longer Atreus. We're not going to do this. I'm not going to do this every time.
We'll be here all day if we do that every time.
And he decided that woman sacrificed herself for him, and that's a chance for the soldiers to take down Zareth, or else it would be in vain. So he finally rises to his feet alongside some of the surviving Raharak around him. He regains his resolve and he simply yells, "Asos!" And the warriors respond in kind. It becomes this chant. Zareth begins building magic again, because that's what he does constantly. And then Pantheon's spear and helm ignite into the biggest flame it's been at this point, rushing with magic. And then the Raharak cast their spears and he charges in behind them. And then we get a final quote here that says, "And for a moment, a star lost with the constellation of war gleams brighter than the sun. Her name was Asos."
And especially like coming off of Pantheon's biography, like this is the like an absolutely beautiful way to wrap this story up here, because the like Atreus pushes on, and even before he became the aspect, what he was most well known for was his tenacity. And it's that tenacity that he then channeled into, a hatred towards the gods that turn their back on humanity, while also wanting to defend humanity in place of these failed gods.
Hmm.
And like this is just absolutely a perfect way to wrap the story up of, the people that he is standing up and fighting for, they're now laying their lives down so that he can keep fighting in their name. So it's the push onwards is for a fallen brother, well, in this case, sister, but it's
Yeah.
for, one of the fallen brothers. We're going to keep fighting for them. And that is reigniting a star in a lost constellation, because we know from Pantheon's bio that the god of war, Pantheon, was represented as a constellation in the sky
Yeah.
that disappeared when he got stabbed by Atrox. So now that fighting spirit of humanity is reigniting the power of the god of war. So that like it's a beautiful poetic way of like ending this little story, because we're getting to see how Atreus is like keeping the Pantheon alive.
Yeah.
But it's also kind of terrifying, because it's like if he brings back more stars, does that mean Atreus is gonna keep losing himself more and more? because like, oh,
Exactly.
if that means Pantheon's getting stronger, Atreus is going to have to take a back seat again, and then he's going to wake up with another sword through his chest and be like, damn it, not again.
And this kind of takes us to like the post story that we want to chat about, a little bit. We have a little bit of time here where, we like to reference the MMO on the horizon, what stories we like to see, what things we'd like to see explored. And from my perspective, Hetch brought it up on his own as well, is Pantheon's mental state and the exploration of that. Because Pantheon is a character, it's pretty, you look at him, you read his bio, you see the shapes and colors, you get it, a Spartan, right? But his story is so well done that his mental state and how he bounces between who he was, what he is now, and what he wants to become in the future, without any like mental intervention from any professionals, is a very tightrope situation. And where he can fall on either side of that rope can be interesting, right? And that could be something that if you put that in the story, people aren't going to expect it. There adds so much more. There's so much depth to the character that they don't see on the surface when they're just looking at the shapes and colors. That when you say, "Hey, we have a story where you interact with Pantheon," but it's him at a state where he's mentally teetering as he's becoming, more successful with killing gods, and he's becoming more powerful, and he's able to begin channeling the godlike presence, but he's technically immortal. What's happening there with his mental state, and where can that push him with his decision making in the future? And I think that's cool. And in MMOs, you have the space to explore that.
Yeah. Not to mention that, like, if you take the opportunity to explore that a little bit, you could also make it a thing of as far as giving players the option of like choosing a faction, because we like that could be a side quest if you as the player decide to, in some side missions help the Raharak, and you're helping the Solari. So then you get to learn more about the followers of the Solari, but it's like, oh, I didn't get that storyline because I was helping the Lunari.
Yeah.
And then, that gives you the ability to take like these stories, like learn more about Diana and about Aphelios. Whereas, over here with the Solari, we're learning about Leona and Pantheon.
Yeah.
And so it gives like an MMO like has, that's the beauty of those kind of games, is that if the world's big enough, players can have completely different experiences from each other, even though they're all playing the same game.
Yep.
And it would be really fun because like doing that whole bit with Pantheon, like you could take that in so many different directions of just like, either have a direction where you are doing like this massive raid battle because it's like a raid against a god.
Yeah.
And Pantheon's the one, like the quest giver for that. Or you could have like a side mission that is like the clowniest thing ever because Atreus is trying to take over the body again.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, we're going to stand and fight for these people. And as soon as you get over there, what are you doing here? We have to go fight this Darkin over here. and like just have like a bunch of like clown fiesta thing because it's like this dude is split personalities and he's running me in circles.
Yeah, split personality characters with a good narrative backing for why they're that way. That's not like just a natural bipolar disorder. It's cool. It's a cool way to play with this fantasy world. So that's just, off the top. Once again, Riot, you have our number. You have our contact information. It's up top. Yes. That's usually where you put it.
Yeah, just go listen to Housekeeping and any of our episodes. We have a lot of them that you can listen to for the housekeeping.
But with that, thanks for sticking around as always. Thanks for listening. And we'll be back soon with the next episode.
Yeah, and take care, everybody. Do it for ASOS.
Do it for her.
Do it for her.